Alright, well, as you can see, the carburetors are off of the 920 visiting bike here. And we finished up the sink and everything. I put a video out there for that, but I just really wasn't happy with how it was running because it still had some popping at idle and something was up with it. So I'm trying to figure out what was going on. So I pulled the carburetors off again and I discovered my problem, which was kind of a rookie mistake. So just in case you make this rookie mistake, then I'll show you what's going on and a reason why. As I always say before, I don't use aftermarket parts. Well, that was my rookie mistake, is that this bike came with an aftermarket boot on the carburetor, and I was like, well, it was on there and it was running, so we'll just put it back on there. Well, that was the big mistake. So let's go in there and look at the carburetors and I'll show you what's up with these aftermarket $17 Amazon piece of carburetor boots. And we'll see that you really need to use OEMs instead of the aftermarket things, because I'll show you the reason why. Alright, so here's the carburetors up on the bench for the 920, and the carburetors are fine. Everything's good about them. I'll go through since I got them off and I'll clean them one more time, just make sure everything's good. But here is my mistake. And what I did is, if you look right here, this is a cheap boot that came off of somewhere. I don't know. It's got markings on it that says ITA. Well, the problem we got with these cheap boots is that this rubber might have been a bicycle tire or something. And you can tell I'm kind of frustrated because I'm really frustrated with myself because I knew better than to do this. We need to go with OE for a lot of parts. Now, I'll use aftermarket stuff for like blinker lights or saddlebags or things like that. But for this really important stuff, you really got to go with the OE, and I'll show you why. Because right here on this boot, you can see, if I hold it up to the light, maybe the light can see it, there's no inside lip right here to grip on the carburetor. And so if we have an OE, of course I got plenty of OE parts laying around here, so we're going to put an OE back on it. But there's a little bump right on the inside that matches up to the groove on the carburetor. And that is really important because that helps to seal. But that's not really the problem. I'll show you the problem real quick. So if we take our aftermarket cheap $17 boot that caused me to take the carburetors off again, and we set it up on there, you'll see, if you look at it, it's just loose as can be. Well, there's no way that thing's going to seal because it's not locking on to the carburetor. And what happened was, is it was pretty tight when I put it on there, but the bike hadn't been used in a while, and so there wasn't any fuel. Well, this guy's going to shrink back after the fuel gets off of it, but we got fuel in it all the time. So as I tuned on the bike, it got worse and worse and worse, and I was still having this popping, so I'm like, there's something wrong. I got to pull this back off. Well, here is my issue, is because that boot right there just will not fit tightly on it. And the other issue is that these clamps that come with the boots, they aren't solid clamps right across there. So you can see that as it expands, you know, this stuff is not oil resistant or fuel resistant or whatever. As it expands, it's going to make a gap right there and you're going to have a big old air leak. Well, that was the problem I was running into. So we got two issues with these. Number one, they're junk, and this one's going into trash as soon as I take my little hose off of it. But you can't use this type of clamp either. You really got to go with the OE type clamp because that clamp is much different. It's got a little metal thing that tightens up all the way around, and the OE clamp is what's going to keep that thing nice and tight on the carburetor. So if I take an OE boot and I put it on there, you're going to see how much harder that boot is to get on there. And you can see that boot is tight. Well, that's because Yamaha used good material for their boots. That boot's not going to expand like that cheap rubber that's on those aftermarket ones right there. So our big problem was because the front carburetor had an aftermarket boot. And the rear carburetor, it was doing fine. It dialed in good. You can see that it's got an OE boot that was on it. Now it's a little bit older and it's a little bit wet, you know, where I was running it. So you can see it's not as tight, but it's still really tight. And it's got the OE clamp. Get it back off here. It's got the OE clamp that's going to clamp all the way around. So I'll put some part numbers up on the screen for these boots, but a good site to go to, and I'll put it up there as well, is this cmsnl.com. And I'll put a little picture of their web link up on there, but you don't have to buy it from them. I just go out there and reference because they got all the explosions for all these Viragos, and you'll be able to look up the part number. Then you can go searching for like a new old stock out on eBay or something like that. But this is my problem, and the reason why I had to take the whole thing back apart again, which is no big deal. I'm just kind of pissed at myself that I made this rookie mistake of using an aftermarket boot, thinking that, well, it was on there, it's going to work okay. It didn't work okay, and it caused me to have to take the carburetors right back off and do all this over again. So, lessons learned from me. Once again, don't use aftermarket parts for these critical things like this, like rectifiers, pickups, you know, things like that. Carb boots, because they're really important. Just try to get with the OEs, and if you can't find them, like I say, there's tons of these bikes made. Eventually you'll find some out on eBay, or you can order them through like that website that I'll put the link up there, but mainly I just use that for part numbers. Alright, so with our cheap aftermarket boot replaced out with an OEM boot on the front, and imagine if both of those had been replaced out and I was trying to figure out what was going on, it'd have been a nightmare. But now we got her all changed out and we got her all synced back, so now power's up good. There's no popping it idle. Throttle's up, got a real good response. So there we go. We just got to dial in our air fuel mix. Once we ride it around a little bit, got to get some things cleaned out, and we'll be in good shape. So this guy right here goes over the trash, never to be seen again. Well, alrighty, hope that helps someone, and thanks for watching.